Hey, y'all, what's good? Welcome back to another episode of Introspective Thoughts. I am your host, the Sheik of all trades, and I have a very special guest, which is our first guest on this platform. It's special. Give it up for my man, Arthur-Charles Njemanze. What's good, man?
I'm doing well, bro. How you doing?
Man, I am doing amazing. I'm doing amazing. So, first and foremost, before we jump into this conversation, because y'all, it's gonna be a good one. Before we get into all of this, let me first tell y'all this: that this man is an amazing philosopher. He's studying philosophy. He's studying psychology. My gosh, what is English yet again? And he's also studying biology as well. So, in case you weren't aware that there are still some Black philosophers out here, we got one for you. I need you to get your pen and paper because we're going to school today. So just be prepared because the conversation that we finna have is about to be A1. So tell the people about yourself, take as much time as you want. We got it. And
So I'm Arthur, Charles, if you want to call me Arthur, that's fine. And I study philosophy, biology, and psychology. Right now, I'm just studying biology and psychology at NCCU. I'm going to transfer to NC State this next semester, and then I'm going to apply philosophy to it. But I have enough philosophy credits to get that done in a few months, I guess. And really, I just started taking philosophy seriously when I took my first philosophy course in 2016. It was the intro to philosophy, but I didn't really like it much because of, again, jargon, the writing, the complex writing. But as I got deep into writing and becoming my own type of writer, I kind of started understanding those types of writing, and then I started sticking to philosophy. I chose psychoanalysis and psychology because, one, I'm good at understanding people. I've kind of taught myself how to, and I've got a spiritual and deeper understanding of people as well. So that is a background of my part. But besides that, I just I try to just focus on those three, biology especially, because one, it really does help if you want to become a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
that's dope. Okay. I rocks with it. Okay, so y'all, the conversation that we're gonna have today is gonna make you think. You have to dig deep into your amateur psychology bag. Just be prepared to think. It's just gonna be what it is. So again, I hope you got your pen and paper ready because I got my pen and paper ready. I'm gonna be taking notes. So let's get into it. So today we're gonna talk about this concept that Arthur Charles posted on Twitter. What was it, like 2-3 weeks ago at this point? Something like that.
Yeah, I was on acid.
It was a minute ago at this point. I know it wasn't that long. It wasn't over a month ago at this point. But there was this concept that you posted that was talking about the concept of I versus we. And that's where I want our conversation to kind of focus on is like where your thoughts about that comes from. And what led you to this thinking of separating I versus we?
So, I already had that concept in me. I forgot his name. He always changes his name on Twitter, but he basically works with, I wouldn't say demons, but he's an occultist, and so for me, I had to form my own protection while studying occultism.
Mm-hmm.
And my own protection was to create in my mind a double selves. I kind of used it was a triad, and so what I did was the Father, the Spirit, the Son, that the concept, the Christian concept,
the Holy Trinity.
And so the Holy Trinity basically, and I used that and formed my own selves, if that makes sense. So throughout my whole life, I've been using the word I. And I is, to me, is a parasitic word. And I say word because it's used like a word. I am. I is like a word itself. So it's not a letter. So when I was on acid, I was on, thinking, I was in this whole other world, and there were concepts and symbols coming to me, and one was the word I. And when I thought about it in a logical perspective, I was like, I equals a self. So I means me, a self, equal in a self. So how does someone say I know myself, but then later on say I want to know myself? That doesn't make sense, because if I equals a self, you should already know yourself, because you already know yourself. There's no such thing as getting to know yourself, because I equals a self. So when I wish I had a pen and paper to show you the logic of it, but basically it doesn't make sense, because words are like a spell. And so what I did was, like, I substituted I with we, because I noticed people talk to themselves all the time as though they are talking to somebody else. So this concept of unity makes sense when you also understand that everything in this life has a unity. You have tissues, you have cells that come together and make up you. So, there's never a time when there's something that exists as an entity on its own. So if you equals unity, then so does the mind. The mind is unity. And therefore, there shouldn't be any type of I or single, because I is kind of an ego word. I feel as when you use I, you're saying you're God, basically. And this is why I say you think you're God when you say I. Because let's think of it like a mushroom, how it spreads spores that also makes mushrooms, right? So there existed one mushroom, and that was I. And its spores were children. We're those children. So we came from, from something that created this universe as one I. Therefore, we can, in order to harken back to that I, we have to be we, and we have to create in our mind a we. And so in order to do that, and when you do that, you notice that your language and your thinking changes, because it's a different type of reasoning. I'm not saying don't say I in person, that's going to be weird if you say we, I'm saying when you're reasoning, when you're thinking of something, let's say you have a question, instead of saying, I don't know, say we don't know, but something in your head will kind of, oblige, we need to know. Where if you say I don't know, you're saying it like in totality. We don't know, we don't give a shit, we don't want to find out. And so that's why I kind of stuck with the thinking of we. And while on acid, I kind of came to this revelation that I, when it's used, especially in the social sphere, is parasitic. When somebody's having a conversation with you and they're describing themselves using I, there's no reason somebody should become envious at all. There's some people, even we've experienced that, when somebody's describing themselves and they describe it in a way where they're using I, you won't be paying attention to the I, but you're like, I do this. Or when you're like applying for a job, your manager asks this person, what are you good at? I'm good at this, I'm good at that. All this, you're gloating about yourself as though you're always going to be that self. But that's not how it works. You're always going to be changing. Your mind is not going to stick to one concept itself. It's always ever changing. So the word I is a parasitic thing where it can make people envious. People can also extract that I and try to embody that I, instead of knowing that you already embody the I yourself. So that's why you see depression at a height right now, where people want to be like others because of the use of I, the use of an ego word, I. Or I would say not just I by itself, but the use of how I is kind of egoistic in a way. So that's why that concept came to mind. There's more to it. I didn't write it down. I was just like I was just dazed and confused, because I was like, I need to research this even more, because I don't believe that, Africans or prior that, Afro people in the diaspora ever were to use the English language. I think that's what fucked us up, was the English language. And that it's kind of, the English language speaks as though you're an ego, and if you look at around the world right now, everybody's English is some type of first or second word. Second language, excuse me. So in a way, that parasitic language is fucking us up. So we need to go back with the reasoning with we instead of I. Create in your mind multiple selves, because you already do that now. You don't look at yourself as just that one totality. You have other selves that you have in your head. So try and split them up. And most psychiatrists would tell you no, because it's kind of schizophrenic, but we already have that idea of how that works. That's not schizophrenia, and that term is not for, African people or the descendants of African people. That's not us. We are supposed to be schizophrenic because we are, in a way, embodying our ancestors. We have the bloodline in us. And so when I say the subconscious mind also is a gateway, I'm saying that you can bring your ancestors in and out as we also. You can, but when you say I, you don't think of your ancestors. You're thinking of yourself as one entity. You don't think of every help that is beyond the spirit realm or in the spirit realm. You're just thinking of yourself.
Right. And I love that explanation, because that now in totality, as I've been seeing and as we've been talking back and forth about it, I see the different moving pieces of that idea. Because one of the things that came to my mind was definitely schizophrenia, as far as like looking at that idea or that concept of we, because there was a conversation me and a good friend of mine had about where we were saying, he postulated that Black students who are diagnosed with ADHD or who are showing symptoms of ADHD may also be schizophrenic as well. But when you start to put those things together and kind of see where there are parallels, you start to realize how those things coincide with one another. Because what I realized is that, being a former teacher and, having family members who have been diagnosed with ADHD, what I've noticed is that, that in itself is literally a sensory overload. It's like you have 6,000 things going on at the same time, and they're all vying for your attention. But when you are supposed to be focused on this, your mind is everywhere else besides that one thing that you have going on. But then when you try to say that, that is a bad thing per se for Black students, then that's when it becomes you need these services, you need this, that, and the third, when it's actually a cultural thing that we've been, trying to understand, at least here, but that we already knew, or that what our ancestors already knew. So that was one thing that kind of came to mind, was that idea of schizophrenia. But then the other idea that came to mind that made this concept broader for me was, I want to go back to the example that you gave about the mushrooms, right? Where one of the things that I was saying is, like, I think I tweeted this earlier today or maybe yesterday, whenever, I don't know, was saying like how when people used to ask me about my classroom, like what was my teacher style, I would always tell them it's organized chaos. Because if you understand that we all came from chaos in the first place, trying to put some organization is what civilization does to us. And then that's how we recognize all of these other problems that go on around it. But when it comes back to the concept of we, what came to my mind was also the idea of that you are formless within a form, if that makes sense. So the formless being the spiritual aspect, being the soul, being the ka, the ba, as the chemists would say, being the kundalini energy, as several different indigenous tribes would say, when you have those things come together, that concept of I versus we makes even more sense, because it's not just you're just the form is not doing things. The formless had to inform the form, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
And so when you talk about that idea of, the mushrooms, it's like, in order for us to multiply, this one thing has to make something happen. So therefore the formless has to make something with the form to happen for the rest of all of this to happen. And so to kind of see that, my next question to you, I guess, is where do you think that, I'm trying to make sure I ask this correctly. Well, not necessarily, but I want to make sure I ask this with the proper intention. What do you think that the issue is with people identifying with I? What, because you called it a parasitic, parasitic word. Like, But beyond the ego, because that's a huge factor in all of this, how does that I, that concept of I versus that we, that I'm just the form versus the form inside the formless, how does that end up fucking us up as a people?
So you see how everybody was when Obama was, being during his presidency, or not during, but during his election, his first time, everybody was just, especially black people, were like, I don't give a fuck who that is. He's black. I need to vote for him. And we did that
True.
twice. So I, in a way that is parasitic, is that I will project myself onto him.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it works as a projection. If he embodies what I believe I embody, see that wordage, I believe I embody,
Mm-hmm.
then he's me, or he's like me. He has my own values.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to say, do we believe he's good?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of causes and when I say we, I mean, like, you got to also have multiple selves. Split
Right.
yourself, split yourself. Don't just have that one person you're talking to. Split it. Because one, they will all have different values. Your mind will never create a copy of a person, of you, and then have that copy have all the values of that original copy has. They're all going to be different. And you're going to notice that you won't get it. Mine will be mundane to that idea of having a carbon copy doing the same shit. So when you split it and say, do we believe that person has a good value, you're going to go into a tangent yourself, having discussions with yourself, and where we will now have to come to address if he is like us. And and then it limits projection, because we are we.
Right.
And if we find out that he has he has some type of nature that is counter to our, to our we, that nigga is lying. You figure that shit out, because one, all this shit is an illusion. It's
right.
a domestication process, and where you see a nigga walking down the street, you have that little anxiety. Should I, make conversation and all that stuff. It's an illusion. You don't have to do shit. You really do not have to do anything. Society says that you have to apply social, or some type of socialization to it.
Right.
So that's where I becomes a projection. It becomes the projection. It becomes a displacement. It becomes everything that the ego feeds off of, because I now has to abide by laws and rules. Now that's not chaos. That's organization. It's not chaos. And and then when you are talking to yourself, somebody tells you, "Why are you talking to yourself?" And they look at you like you're crazy. But that same person, if they're alone, will talk to themselves. So we're domesticating ourselves in a way where it's like, I is an ego when it's surrounded by other eyes. But if there's a we, if there's a we in that system, and there's one, with a bunch of eyes, people are going to shun that we. Crazy people talk to themselves. But if you look in the past, and we have especially ancient Greek philosophers, they talk to themselves, and yet they were killed for that. Socrates was killed for that, for having conversations with people and having conversations with themselves. So in a way, they don't want crazy people, because crazy people are the normal people. The people who associate with I are the ones who are domesticating themselves and can't see through this illusion. So that's why we as Africans can see through that shit, because we were never an I, we were we. We were never a fucking I. We were just a we. We reasoned with we. We had ancestors that we prayed to. We had spirits that we prayed to. These people didn't have the same shit. They copied that shit from us, but it never stuck to them because they were never built like that. So we always had a we factor to us, a we reasoning. We pray to, we have totems, we have statues for our ancestors. So we are always a we. We are never an I. The ego, when we were placed into Western society and we had that amnesia, we have ADHD and all this shit, it's because we're domesticating ourselves. We're thinking that we're one person who can't do anything, when we are multiple people that we have to reason with in our head. When I say we are potential, I'm not saying we're one person. We're multiple people that we can move in and out. We can move in and out of, becoming more, and always, becoming a future with it. So you see what I'm saying? It's not like it's a language thing. It's always been a linguistic shit.
Yeah.
It's fucking us up. We need to reason with we going forward.
Wow, you just dropped so much. I don't even know where to start, dude. Okay. Because you said something that was very poignant that made me just like, boom, a brain blast. The portion where you said that society doesn't want crazy people because crazy people talk to themselves. But I don't know if anybody else caught this or will catch this, but in the midst of you saying that, I'm like, they don't want crazy people, but because the crazy people are the ones that have broke the illusion, that have broke the matrix, that have broke out of the construct.
Mm-hmm. That ego construct that is holding us back. Because the ego will always think that I have to associate with a tribe or this false tribe. Mm-hmm. Like, you see how fucking rednecks, they all dress the same. They can't call themselves unique, bro. They cannot say we're unique. Even down to, let me say, gang members in our community, they cannot call themselves unique because they all dress the same and they're all acting the same. So when you think of it like that, and people say, you know, I know myself, I know I'm this self, I can show you your archetype, nigga. You know, I can show you your archetype right now. You're not original because, one, you still reason with an ego, which is I. Mm-hmm. When you know inside of you that you're a we. One, let's start with this. Closet people who find wives who find that their husband are closeted gay or whatever. Mm-hmm. How do you miss that shit? You know, he's acting like a heterosexual this whole time. No, because he reasons with I. He has to force himself to reason with I, and when he reasons with I, he's lying to himself. But when he says we, if we were to have a conversation, if I told him don't say I to me, say we, he would by chance admit to himself being gay. You wouldn't even notice. It would be the language he was using. You know. So language, in a way, and when I also when we go to Lacan science, which is a language, the subconscious mind is structured like a language. That's how I got that shit, because we need to listen to the subconscious, because it's me and the subconscious having a conversation. Mm-hmm. It is not I alone, because I assumes that I don't even have a subconscious and I can make any decision and it happen. Mm-hmm. You know. So I don't like the word I like we better, you know. And there's so much that we can do. We got to do it in parts.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, I didn't know where to go with that, because I was just like, my God, there's a lot in that. Because what do you think that we as a people need to do in order to embody this kind of we concept, or is there a thing that we need that I don't even know which we I'm using?
I know what you mean,
but like how do we get to talking about we instead of I?
See, the thing about that is I want it to be a way of reasoning. Okay. I don't want it to be a way of linguistic approach where we're talking to, having conversation, we're saying we. I want it to be a reasoning thing where if I ask you a question, I want you to say we in your head. When I ask you that question, you repeat that question, we, not I. Because when you say we, especially in your head, you're going to have a dialogue. You're going to start a dialogue with yourself. If you say I, you're going to have this totality and you're going to give me your ego. You're not going to give me your real self. You're going to give me your ego. But with we, you could actually take parts of the speech, parts of the conversation between yourselves and actually form an idea that is original and not an egoistic one. When we are always on Twitter, you see the same shit being tweeted about, oh, how do we not know about this news? That bullshit people post, oh, why is that? It's not because niggas are using the I, or it's a parasitic thing. It's really a parasitic. How are niggas using the same language and the same construct to address the same shit that we've seen so many times? Is because of I, So when you reason with that, say we, use the word we. So why weren't we addressed about this situation? You notice that the linguistic will be different. Mm-hmm. When you type it, okay, so People will have different approach to why, to describing, this shit, instead of saying, oh, why are we informed about this, or why isn't this on the news, or some bullshit like that. It's a different approach. I can't explain it using words, but you will see more unique people if we were to reason with we instead of I, because I is a totality of who you think you are. And like I said, I equals a self. So you can't say I don't know, I know, because it's a contradiction. It's a paradox, because if I equals a self and you're saying I don't know myself, I is a self. So therefore you do know yourself. You are just being you're just trying to steal from some other self when you say I don't know myself. Most people say I don't know myself, and then that's because they saw a nigga that is doing some shit and they're trying to be like that nigga. So they say I don't know myself, and they're trying. No, you're just an envious nigga. That's what it is. You know yourself. You just don't know that you are potential and that you can become more than one thing. So it's like I gotta bring it. I gotta make a list for it, and then we can do it for part 2. Because there's a lot of shit niggas do not know. There's a lot of shit niggas do not know about themselves. They don't know that they can create two selves in their head, or they can use some type of method. Your mind is there for you, not for you. Don't have to use your mind in the way that white people taught you how to use that shit. You don't. You could create you can create multiple selves. You could create a whole world, and where you're in that whole world, and things can make sense for you. Because if they make sense in your head and you bring it down to the material world, you will notice that you'll be different and unique. That's why crazy people look crazy, because they don't have an ego. They don't have that I thing. They are always in their head. Let's start with crackheads. I don't want to go there, but they are unique. They are fucking unique. You cannot tell me you're fucking unique. They will come up to you and have a conversation with you. And then the conversation will be mind-blowing. You would just be like, damn, like this nigga is actually saying some shit.
Yeah.
But the ego in us will be like, haha, this nigga, we don't want to fuck with this nigga because he whatever, he's a drug addict and all this bullshit. He is more unique than you, because in his mind, I promise you, he has worlds that he already created that you can't even do with your own mind. So it's like people don't see this shit. Crazy people throughout time, and we're even starting with philosophers, yogis. There were crazy yogis in India, but they had wisdom. Right. They were full of wisdom, because why? They never reasoned with an ego, which was I. They saw themselves not as one person, but as a unit. That's how they it's so beautiful when you're in that headspace of we. I want people to actually practice it, because you then notice that you've been lied to your whole life, that you're one person. But when really you're just a copy of your parents, a copy of the nigga down the street who you took his eye from when he was having a conversation with you. It's a parasitic word, bro.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have to definitely have to do this, because I mean, there's so many different directions in which this conversation could go just off of that alone. Because the idea of you're taking a concept or an I from other people and applying it to self, whether that be historical or modern day, whether that be by race, whether it be by gender. Another idea that kind of comes to mind that I feel like lines up with this is the idea of labels, and how labels are essentially a form of the I that people are taking from other people and applying it to themselves. That's why I've told people personally, for me, I don't subscribe to certain labels that the mainstream uses to describe, the people that are similar to me, because we're still different, we're still not the same person. Like, both of us are Black men, but that don't mean that we've had the exact same experience. It's something that I've had to explain to some people before, but we don't have those similar experiences. But when you take those labels, it's just like when people say, what is the saying? When you take on a label, you take the good, the bad, and the ugly. You don't get to just pick and choose what you use. Same thing people have been telling Christians for God knows how long or forever, that, when you take on a religion, you take on the ideas, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which means if you're going to, you know, align yourself with this ideology, you're gonna align yourself with the bad portions of it too. Now, of course, there's some different aspects and things, you know, that will be different, but just this whole conversation as a whole is, I mean, wow. Yeah, I can't say no much more on it. I'm sitting, I'm thinking, and the cogs are like
it takes a long time to marinate, because, bro, the reason I marinated on it was because I was already on acid. Bro, I mean, it was 10 to 15 hours that I went through that whole time talking to myself. We are we. You know, I try to reject I, because when I noticed that I was rejecting the I, we were having a conversation. And we, you know, my cells were having a conversation, and these cells would also at times, like when I say they will feed me knowledge that I never cared about. You know, there's time when you make peace with your subconscious mind and with we, you notice that when you have conversations with we, they will feed you the same shit you see in philosophy classes. They will feed you the same shit that you see that people are already talking about in the spiritual community. So in a way, the subconscious mind, when you do have an ego, is something that, you know, is selective. But when you actually open it with the we, it's not just selective. You can actually go and transport into that realm, and you can actually get so much information from it. And that's why I say, again, crazy people are not crazy. They're the most original people in society. We're the one domesticating ourselves. We've been domesticating ourselves for a long time. And when I notice that, hey, people telling me, stop talking to yourself. Why shouldn't I stop talking to myself? What type of shit is that? You know, why should I sit there and just not have a conversation with the cells that already is in my mind? Because they have this perception of we're crazy. So I don't like that. You know, I had to stop that bullshit, because in order to move forward, you need to go through the left-hand pathway of saying that, look, I'm an individual, and whatever comes to mind, I can create that with my own mind. Do not try to, you know, or don't try to stick to society rules of I, because you're not that I. You're multiple selves. You're your ancestors. You are whatever demon possesses you, whatever spirit is in you. You are literally everything that is a totality of you, but you need to split it all up. Like your body is cells and tissues. Split it all up for you to understand. Don't just bring it into totality. And one thing I will say is, like, when you wake up in the morning, you say, what am I going to do? You get this overwhelming feeling of, God damn, I have so many shit to do, right?
Whew, yeah.
So if you say what do we have to do? Your mind will already put you at an advantage of, okay, let's do this first. Because somebody will have a conversation. This shit needs to be done first, because it's a priority. Because then it'll start the dialogue for you. Where I is a totality of overwhelming, it will cause depression. You just feel depressed, like, damn, I got a lot of shit to do. Because you're thinking I has to do all those things, where if it's we just split up in pieces, a unit. So that's also one thing I've seen that helps out.
Wow. Okay. So last thing that I have, do you have any final thoughts for the class on today? Because I mean, y'all, I hope y'all was taking notes. If not, of course, you can always rewind, you know, and go back and look. But I hope y'all was taking notes, because I got so many other questions. We definitely have to do a part 2 on this conversation, because I got the first question for that on deck already. Probably need to put on a sticky note, we'll save it for later, but whatever. But do you have any final comments, cries of outrages, concerns, questions for the class, things that you want to pose before we get out of here for today?
One thing, when you're using the I and you see something that interests you, but you don't go to it, you will later on see that shit again. Why? Because your ego deterred you from looking. The ego is like a deterrence. You know, right now I can tell you, most people that are homophobic, when they say I don't like gay people, they're lying, and they know they're lying. Why? Because in the back of their head, there's something saying, nigga, you are fucking lying. There's a feeling that comes with it, you know, because I can tell you that from experience. When I was trying to fit in and I was trying to be misogynistic and be homophobic, when I would say that shit, there was something in my head telling me, you are fucking lying. You're only doing this to yourself to fit into an ideology that is part of society. So your mind will tell you when you're lying.
when you reason with we. When I started saying, okay, we need to start doing, when I started doing that shit, I didn't hear it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I started noticing that I'm more accepting of people, because I never gave a fuck. I never gave a fuck if you were gay or if you were like, you know, I never hated women. I never did, you know, but your mind, especially the ego, is so illusory
Mm-hmm.
that it will tell you shit that you know that you don't, that is not you. That's because you're reasoning with I, that you in totality are in control of yourself. You're not. You know, a lot of shit that happens is either ancestrally guided or subconsciously guided. So when you notice, well, most people don't notice that shit. They still think that they're the one in command of their whole life. You're not. There's other forces that are in command. Like I said, chaos is at play, and chaos is not just, you know, an energy of that built this whole, you know, system or matrix. No,
Right.
chaos is a totality of spirits. It's a totality of, you know, universal laws, cosmic laws. It's just a totality of things, but
Right.
it's not under the guise of I. It's a we system created by one I, which is, let's say, God or gods, you know. So in a way, you have to abide by as above as, you know, so below. So you are a we. Like I say, when I say the universe is a we.
Right.
I don't say it's a I, because I don't believe the universe itself is God. I think there's other forms that is a supreme, but I'm not going to go there. That's complex.
That's a whole different conversation.
That is different. So with me, I'm like, I'm a we, and I've accepted that my name, and that's the thing about names.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we never took pride in our fucking names, especially as Nigerians. We started taking it names seriously when Europeans invaded.
Yeah.
when they invaded, we started wanting to have this last name, first name that kind of, you know, is kind of European. My name's Arthur-Charles. That shit is not supposed to be there. So
Trust me, I look. As we discussed, there's not a plural of us. There's only one Charles. Apparently.
So exactly. So what I told myself was like, we're a unit. We've always been a unit.
Yeah.
You know, we just kind of corrupted that idea of what a unit is. So, and when you do reason with we, you notice that your lies become less of a lie, because it's going to become a truth. Because you're going to notice, I'm telling you, bro, most people that are homophobic, they're not homophobic. One, they might be homophobic because they're gay themselves. Two, they might be homophobic because they are trying to fit in. They're trying to impress these people. They're in the I system, where they're not even thinking of a we, but when they're split apart, then that's when they're a we. You know, when the doors are closed, they're themselves. You know, that's how you get closeted gays, where when the doors are closed, they're doing their own shit, but when they're with their boys, I hate gay people. That's literally what it is.
Right.
Reason with we and not I, and you will come to find out that Western society, that I language, is fucking you up. It's the thing making you depressed. You got to start saying we as a system. We're a unit. We're not one person. We are made up of units. And when you see that, you know, you being a unit is not saying that, you know, you have no identity. You're still an identity, but you are a we system. You need a reason with we, you know, because one, you were brought here by ancestors, by spirits, by a lot of shit. You're not just one thing. You are multiple. You know, you have multiple vessels in your subconscious mind, or multiple cells in your subconscious mind. So that's one thing I would say people need to start, you know, doing. I tell you, that's how I catch people lying most times, is when I have a conversation and their eye doesn't even align with who they are. And I can tell them, when I tell them, oh shit, how do you know that? Because nigga, I know, because you're lying to me. You know, I know that because your language is very programmed. You know, when you say I, your ego is in control, and you don't know that shit. And it's a beautiful thing. If I were to start my, you know, my psychiatry practice, or, you know, open up my own, yourself to themselves.
I like that. I like that. I definitely like that. All right, so we got. I have so many more questions. Okay,
this down, bro.
This is the last one. Not even last question I'm gonna ask, but it's a comment, because again, the stuff is connected and it's making sense. Okay. So the idea and the concept of names, right? Because all of us have at least 3 names. We have the first name, the middle name, and the family name. Mm-hmm. Just that in itself denotes the concept of we. Because just follow me here, y'all, because I know my thinking ain't gonna make sense, but just stay with me and it's gonna bless you. But,
I know where you about to go.
Okay, so I'm gonna explain it for the folks so they can see where I'm going with this. So if we have this concept of if we have this idea of names, right? You have a certain sound that is attested to you as a person, right? And we have multiple names. That in itself right there is the concept of we, because though you're called by your first name, some people are called by their middle name. Some people are just called by their last name, you know. And that in itself denotes different selves, because when you're called one thing, you're gonna respond to it as that person or that thing. If that
exactly.
So like if somebody was to call me by my first name, first of all, we know each other well enough for you to even be able to call me by my first name. But if not even that, it's the fact that we have a connection in some type of way for you to be able to call me by my name in general. But then if you call me by my middle name, then you know a different aspect of me. You know a different self of me as a whole. But then as a teacher, I'm used to being called by my last name, so my students see me as a different self than what my mama may see of me, or what you may see of me, or what the pastor at the church may see of me, or what the United States government may see me. Like, we all are seen as different entities within this one self. So that in itself right there kind of encapsulates the concept of we in itself.
And it does, but to the extent that it's not internal, it's external.
Yeah,
where people see you as that, you know. So they see you as a different thing or a different aspect, but you're still one person, but you have a we. Why they see you as differently is because you have already within you internally a we, and you can actually mimic it. Sometimes it's false, and that's the false is the false one is what we're trying to get rid of. So if you reason with we and then approach them with your we reasoning, they will be, in a way, seeing you as the same. You know, they will then start seeing you as that one entity, but in your head, you're still a we. To them, you're still that we, but you're still a different type of we. It's so difficult to put into words, but what basically they're seeing as you can't skew other people's perception of you. They have their own ideologies that they withhold in their head. So in order for them to see you as actually just that one person that you're trying to be, they have to then reason with we too. Most people don't do that. They say I. So if two, like I said, I've said before, two false egos cannot be real with one another.
Yeah.
So if you are one real ego and one is a false ego, that false ego will create bullshit about you being one real ego. So that's why I say that, you know, you have to be the we. Even if they see you as a different we, that's because they embody an ego that wants to see you as what they want to see you. So if somebody wants to see you as a weak ass nigga, sorry, the African came out of me.
Hey, it's all good, because as I say always, I fucking hate the English language because of shit like that.
Exactly. If they want to see you like that, if they want to see you weak, they will view you as weak. You can't change that shit. There's nothing you can do on your end to change that shit. If you want to see yourself as a strong person, only you can do that. You can say we are strong, nobody can fuck with us, but somebody will always want to fuck with you. That's not going to change. They don't know you reason differently than them. So in perspective wise, you shouldn't care about the name. The name aspect of it can be something. I think the name aspect of it is false, in that when somebody calls you, like me, if they call me Charles or Arthur, I may act in a certain way that, you know, responds to their need. But ever since I started reasoning with we, I don't. I actually act the same way that I act with my mom, my dad, and, you know, my friends. They see that shit. But again, that one is just more of a perspectivism thing. I wouldn't take too much of the we concept externally. I would put it internally, because we're trying to fix ourselves. We're not trying to fix people's perception of ourselves. They will always see what they want to see.
Right.
So that's one thing I would say about the name aspect. But you're right on the point. If we all reason as we would see each other as unique. There would be no such thing as a definite archetype. There would be no such thing as that. There would be a unique build where we will always want to go chase after certain. Yeah, we will still have envy in certain things, but envy will be used as I want to be like that nigga, you know, and not just be like him. I want to use certain skills he has and become myself. You know, that's what the we would be. It wouldn't be like I, where I envy this nigga, but I'm always gonna act like fake towards him. I'm gonna act like his friend, and I'm gonna try and be like him. You know, in all types of way. You know, we always have people like who try to be like us. You know, you never notice it, but they're always trying to be like us. Even if it's on Twitter, they'll always try to be like us. You know, and they'll always be wanting to be like tweet like you and all that shit. That's not normal. You're domesticating yourself. You got to be a we, nigga. You got to be an embodiment of multiple things, because you're not just one vessel. You have multiple vessels in your subconscious mind, and you know that, but you're trying to be that one thing that you see in somebody else. That's unnatural. You know, that's very unnatural.
I see that. Wow, man, this is a bomb ass conversation. This is why I do this. This is why I created this platform. This is why I do what I do. This is why I'm a teacher. This is why I'm a forever learner, because you can have conversations like this, and like people don't realize this is life-changing conversation if you take the knowledge and apply it, make it wisdom, make it plain, and do something with it. Like you can, like, this is paradigm shifting information or just conversation in general. So I have to say, first and foremost, thank you so much for being not only the very first
no problem
Introspective Thoughts, but bringing this conversation to the airwaves, because man, that is something, you're an author, you need to write that. Like we need that on wax, fam. Like this is
I'm on the work on it. I'm working on it right now. So
yeah,
I mean, it's gonna take a while too.
Hey, look, at this point, we ain't got enough time. Niggas are still sleeping. So we ain't got time. We ain't got enough time. But I appreciate you for coming on and having this conversation. I appreciate you for sharing all of your knowledge. Tell the people where they can find you at. Tell them your handles. Tell them your socials. Tell them all that great stuff.
So you can follow me on Instagram. I take photography, so you can. It's Sweet Dolomite. You might have to write that down, but it's SWEET. DOLEMITE, and then on Twitter you can follow me at Carlesti. It's KHARLESTI. So get me out there.
Trust me, y'all. I'm gonna put it down there so y'all can spell it. I'm gonna put it slow so y'all can spell it. Don't worry, I got y'all. So yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We greatly appreciate that. Hey, y'all, until next time, I hope y'all enjoyed this. Y'all be great. I holla.